Good morning and welcome to the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry's second round of public hearings. From March 2023, the inquiry has been occupied with the gathering and analyzing of evidence from stakeholders across the fresh produce value chain. The inquiry has received written submission and data, has undertaken field investigations across South Africa, and held a previous round of public hearings. Today marks another milestone as the inquiry commences its second round of public hearings. Following the first round of public hearings, wherein insightful contributions were made by various stakeholders, the inquiry identified a need to continue gathering information from large fresh produce retailers. As the SPAR Group and Woolworths participated in the first round of hearings, the inquiry invited Pick n Pay retailers, Shoprite Checkers, and Food Lovers Market to participate in this round. Out of the contacted retailers, only Shoprite Checkers declined to participate in this public hearing. Public hearings are an important part of the inquiry's processes and allow for a further means of engagement between the inquiry and stakeholders in a public hearing. The second round of public hearings continues the inquiry's information and evidence gathering processes. As with the first round of hearings, I shall be chairing these proceedings and will be assisted by the inquiry's technical director, Mr. Juan Mare. Stakeholders will be led by Mr. Derek Bowles, who is the inquiry's evidence leader and an admitted attorney. He will be supported by the inquiry's technical team. Stakeholders will have an opportunity to address the inquiry should they wish to, whereafter the evidence leader will pose certain questions to the stakeholder. Proceedings are live streamed and also recorded. Insofar possible, the hearings will be conducted in a manner that does not divulge confidential information. At times, proceedings may enter into an in-camera session to safeguard confidential information. Such sessions will be limited to ensure as much of the proceedings as possible occur in public sessions. I express my thanks to Pick n Pay and Food Lovers for their time and willingness to participate in these public hearings. I now hand over to Mr. Bowles to lead Pick n Pay retailers in the first session. Over to you, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Peacock, Mr. Grobler, first of all, thank you for coming through. On behalf of the technical team, I just wanted to welcome you, and as I said, thank you for your ongoing participation in the inquiry, as well as your attendance here today in these public sessions. So just in terms of housekeeping, what we'd ordinarily do is we'd split the session in two. You'd be afforded an opportunity to provide some insights into your business, and then after that we'd move into the second part of the session where the technical team will lead some questions, which will be done by myself, and it'll be an engagement in sort of in those terms. But my understanding is that you've decided not to do a presentation, so we can just jump straight into the technical team's questions. Look, we note that Pick n Pay's made substantial submissions already to the team. We've considered those, and you can deem those as being read. But we just like to maybe, for purpose of this public forum, cover some of the same ground that has been covered in that in those submissions. So, and we are mindful of your time and also the confidentiality, as the chair indicated as well. So, but we'll do that in a sort of general term, in general terms as well. I think there should be a laminated folder there in front of you with an oath. These proceedings will be conducted under oath. If you could just both indicate, first of all, that you don't have an objection in taking the oath. Sorry, just push the little red button there. Thank you.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection. And then if I could please just ask you to state your names, full names, designations, and then read out the oath, and so help me God.
Shall I say ladies first?
I'm Jackie Peacock, Head of Produce for Pick n Pay. I look after the produce department. And I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you.
My name is Johan Grobler. I'm the head of Fresh within Pick n Pay. And I also swear that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we can just jump straight into it then. Maybe just by way of an introduction, can you maybe describe the business activities of Pick n Pay and how Pick n Pay is positioned relative to other businesses that are in that fresh produce market space, that sell fresh produce to end consumers?
Perhaps could I call you Mr. Chair? I know the real chairperson is there, but
You're welcome to call me Derek. It's fine.
so just as we've submitted, and I think thanks for the question, because I do think there's a point of clarity we need right at the start. But just from a business activity point of view, as we've submitted, Pick n Pay Group as a retail business in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, which operates across different formats. We operate mainly Pick n Pay, Boxer, and Africa. I think this, I think very important for both Jackie and I is that you should note that the answers we'll be giving today really will default to the Pick n Pay corporate South Africa business. Very simply, because we don't procure on behalf of Africa, and so for the franchisees. We've got a franchise business, but from the franchise agreement, there's an agreement that they might procure somewhere else.
Great. So you mentioned Boxer and Pick n Pay, obviously the franchise stores as well as the corporates. Maybe just explain that multiple store format that Pick n Pay has adopted and position those specific formats and relative to the market as well.
So firstly, we're not answering on behalf of Boxer. Once again, they procure totally on their own. They've got their own commercial team, procurement team. So if I just look at the Pick n Pay corporate stores, we basically have three formats. So the first format is the supermarkets, which probably most of us shop in. We then have a format, a far smaller format, more so for neighborhood shopping, which is called the local stores. And then we have what we call the big boxes, which is the hypermarkets. And that's mainly the three formats within Pick n Pay corporate South Africa.
Okay, great. So maybe just explain the Boxer group, where they're sort of positioned, who's their target market?
They're mainly positioned in KZN. However, they are reaching out nationally, already reaching out into the Western Cape, into Limpopo, Gauteng, so certainly increasing their footprint nationally. I think I should leave it there in terms of their business. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the initial concerns from an inquiry perspective, and these were captured in the terms of reference as well, is that the growing trend towards direct contracting will perhaps result in a further erosion of the NFPM income base. And and eventually cause a collapse of the NFPMs as we know them. What is your views on that hypothesis?
I would leave that to Jackie.
Thank you.
So Pick n Pay, as corporate Pick n Pay, we don't procure off the NFP market. So I can't feedback on what they would be doing or the impact it would have on their business. Our directive is, and how we procure is obviously through farmers. So yes, I can't answer on that one.
All right. So, I mean, I think you probably led into my next question, that Pick n Pay no longer procures from the NFPMs. Can you maybe explain the reason why you no longer do so, and also then delve into the evolution behind the shift towards an integrated supply model?
So the decisions have been made. It's through the years, I would say. I think it really goes back to sustainability on our side, and obviously the big directive is on cost implications for us to procure through the produce market. Another part of it would be around health and safety. We get direct from farmers. We know where the products come from and all of that goes behind it.
Okay, so you mentioned that it did sort of happen over a period of time. Around about early 2000s, I think we started noticing trends, at least internationally, in Argentina and the UK, where supermarkets or retailers were moving away from the wholesale market. Was that something similar to the experience that we had in South Africa as well?
I can't answer on that one. I've been in the produce department for a few years, so in the time that I've been here, we've dealt direct with the supply base.
Okay. So you wouldn't be able to then ask or answer at least, what changed at least with regards to retailers procuring on the NFPMs at some point, and then moving to this integrated supply chain model?
No, I can't answer on that. As Pick n Pay, our directive, and we foresee the way forward is to deal direct with the supplier base.
Okay.
And that, as I say as well, I can only answer on behalf of Pick n Pay. I can't answer on that for other retailers.
Perfect. What would it take for a large retailer like Pick n Pay, for instance, to start procuring regularly at the NFPMs, or is it something that is just off the table and you've invested in your supply chain models?
I think it's less about investing in supply chain models and more around investing in food security.
Okay.
So we can deal directly with farmers. We can set up growing programs directly with farmers. When you're dealing on the markets, and that your availability of product is all just based on supply and demand and what's available at the time. So we would never be able to service our customer at the end of the day with consistent product availability.
Okay. And is there a cost benefit in procuring directly?
From our part, yes, there is definitely, because you are setting up direct programs with farmers. It's long-standing relationships you build with farmers. It's not hit and miss as to what's happening on the markets. Yes.
Okay. So there's no instances where you would opt to purchase from the NFPMs, maybe in demand shocks or supply shocks or anything to that effect. Is there a top-up facility that you would consider, or is it if you don't get it through your supply chain, you just don't have it on your shelves?
Yeah, we don't deal direct. You have to have a market card to buy off the market. We don't have a market card, so there's no opportunity for us to buy off the market.
Would you then buy through wholesalers?
We do have our consolidators, we call them, that we would be able to, but our consolidators are also set up. We've got set up growing programs with them, and they've got growing programs set up with the relevant supplier base. Generally, if there's not product available in our stores, there's not product available on the markets either.
All right. Okay, so maybe just moving on to the price discovery process at the NFPM. So what we have learned, or at least what we've observed in the inquiry so far, is that even stakeholders that aren't purchasing directly on the markets are still using the price discovery process at the markets as some sort of negotiation benchmarking, or at least a benchmark upon which to negotiate directly with growers. Would you say the price discovery process at the NFPMs is a reliable indicator of value pricing?
So from our perspective, we do look at the market pricing 100%. It's very important because of what the market pricing does within the industry. So very much dictates the industry pricing. but it's not the sole reason or the sole point we use as to decide on what the pricing would be. No.
Can you maybe just go through some of those factors that you would consider?
So we obviously we do benchmarking across other retailers. We go and have a look at what the pricing is doing in the other retailers. We look at what is happening within the industry, and then obviously it's off the market. So you can benchmark against that. It gives you quite a good view of what's happening in the industry.
Okay. So, I mean, the sort of price discovery at the NFPMs, would you view that as a proxy for an ex-works distribution centre price for a retailer, for yourselves?
Sorry, just repeat that question.
Sure. So what I'm saying is, obviously product gets delivered to your DCs from the growers, and it arrives there. Would you consider the pricing at the NFPMs? Would that be a proxy, a relative proxy for the ex-works price that arrives at your DC?
I can't say that off, no, because there's varying factors that would impact there being a difference in price.
Okay.
So.
All right. Okay, so I think I'm going to move on now to the second theme, which is SME and HDP procurement. So what proportion, and you can sort of give a broad range, of fresh produce that is procured by the Pick and Pay group is sourced from SME HDP growers?
So we have submitted all the percentages obviously in the documentation. So it is a substantial portion that we are procuring direct from SMEs. But I think the other part of it is that our consolidators are further procuring quite a substantial volume from our SMEs as well.
Okay. Pardon me. So what are the challenges that Pick and Pay faces in procuring from this specific class of growers?
So I would say the challenge is, I would say more probably on the SME side. But if I take it holistically, there's obviously audit requirements and that need to be in place, which are government regulated. It's not on our regulations. So that has to be done. And then as it goes through the value chain, obviously, or the supply chain, there are varying factors that might impact an SME delivering into us. From our part, the most important thing is that we are able to service them. So our best route into us and the quickest route when we identify an SME is through our consolidators. And then as their businesses grow and build, we then will move them. We will then move them onto direct supply.
Okay. Does Pick and Pay require any form of exclusivity from growers to only supply Pick and Pay or supply a certain percentage of their fresh produce to Pick and Pay?
We do not have any exclusivity agreements, no. The only thing that Pick and Pay is particular on is we have our own packaging. So obviously a Pick and Pay packaged product can only be supplied into Pick and Pay. It can't go into any other retail or any other informal market. But that's the only thing, yes.
And do you supply the packaging to the growers themselves, and they then pre-package, and it gets delivered to your DC in a
We don't supply the packaging ourselves. Gotcha. We work with packaging companies, so obviously on what it looks like and the layouts and that. But then the suppliers would procure direct then from the packaging companies.
Can you maybe take us through the growing programs that you have in place, and maybe just explain how those operate and the benefits behind that and the thinking behind these growing programs?
So obviously the growing programs, the most important thing around a growing program is obviously being able to have product on the shelf at the end of the day. So we look back on history, we look back on what the demand has been over time. We also look back on areas where we may have had no supply, that we need to now fill gaps. And then based on that, we are then able to work directly with the grower to say this is now the volume requirements that we have. It's also very dependent on what part of the country products are grown in, obviously because certain crops work well in certain regions where others don't. So based on that would then be for us to then issue a growing program to a supplier. For a supplier or our farmers, the most important thing on that is the fact that they've got that program of business then. They know then for the year, the 12-month program, that they've got business with us, that we will procure product from them.
Okay. And maybe just walk us through how that price is determined. I know you did indicate some of the factors that you consider, but maybe just if you could expand on that a little bit and walk us through how that price is determined and how often it is negotiated with growers.
So we do our pricing weekly with our growers. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the areas that we look at on be it on the market or be it with our competitor retailers, what's happening in the industry, supply and demand as well, which would have a big impact on the price. And then it's negotiated then with our suppliers. Direct, we do negotiations across our full supplier base. And then based on that, obviously, then pricing would then be discussed.
Okay, so it is a negotiated price.
100% negotiated, yes.
And, I mean, you would consider factors, like input spikes and things like that into
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. It's very important that we look at the holistic view of what's happening and what is impacting the grower as well. And then based on that, yes.
I mean, we have seen an increase in the cost of food, and I think it's been broadly dealt with, it's been dealt with sort of quite broadly in the media. Maybe just sort of give us an indication of some of those, some of the reasons behind that increase in price that we've seen.
Are you asking me to answer on behalf of Pick n Pay, where our cost prices?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest impact at the moment we look at is load shedding. Load shedding is having a massive impact, and I talk on Pick n Pay within our stores, and I'm talking produce directors. The impact on our fridges, generators running extra times, all of that. That is, I would say, one of the biggest ones. You've obviously got your general labor costs that increase. You've got rental costs that increase, and all those things then that would impact the increase in price from a retailer's perspective.
And I mean, so you, it's an ex-works price that gets delivered from the grower to your DC. I mean, have you seen an increase in the transportation costs on their side and also on your side as well? And maybe just talk us through the costs of the costs of transporting fresh produce.
Transport costs have increased exponentially for us as well as our growers. Our growers deliver direct to our distribution centres, but we are obviously servicing stores across the country. So the cost of transport then, yes, it has increased hugely on hiring of trucks and obviously then the fuel that goes with it, yes.
Okay. And is rail a consideration? I mean, we have seen a shift over the years from rail to road transport. I mean, has that had an impact as well?
We've never dealt with rail, but I think if we look at what the reliability of rail in this country at the moment is not something we could consider. There would have to be a major change in that area for us to have to consider moving to rail.
Okay. So maybe just back to that negotiation process as well. You did indicate, I think you've answered that, but maybe just from a perspective of a small grower, an HDP, SMME grower negotiating with Pick n Pay versus a large commercial grower. I mean, is it done on the same basis or,
All our suppliers are treated the same. So the negotiation that happens across is across every supplier exactly the same. Yeah. Yes.
And do you work with sort of small farmer associations? I mean, I can name a Mopani Farmers Association in Artenzenine way. Do you deal with them or do you deal with the individual farmers themselves, individual SMME, HDP grower?
So we've got consolidators. We've got a portion that, as I mentioned earlier, that we deal direct with SME, and we've got a portion that we deal through our consolidators.
Okay. All right. So maybe just moving on to global gap certification. You did deal with that in your submission.
Yes.
But maybe just walk us through the rationale behind choosing global gap as a supply benchmark.
So we've got two gaps. The one is a local gap and the one is a global gap.
Okay.
And that is based on its health and safety, really. So that's the whole reason behind it. And it's not something we can decide to do. It's what we have to do from a health and safety perspective for our customers as well.
So what is the difference between local and global gap? in real terms? I mean,
Local gap is your basic entry into market. There's very basic requirements that are needed for that particular supplier to be able to do local gap versus what the global gap would be.
so you implement both, you use both?
Yes, 100% we use both.
And in what instance would you use both? I mean, so in which instance would you apply the high threshold, and which one would you apply the lower
It's all
threshold?
based on crops. So it would be crop dependent and the risk of a crop. So be it that particular crops might be more inclined to have a higher health and safety risk versus what potentially another crop wouldn't.
Okay, so it's got nothing to do with the grower themselves. So you wouldn't perhaps lower the threshold for an SME HDP grower and then apply the higher standard or higher threshold for large commercial farmers?
We treat all our farmers the same. The entry to market on the local gap is definitely an opportunity for the SMEs to get direct into the market. So it is a better option, but from us, we apply both. We don't have strict standards on either. It's really, at the end of the day, about looking after also our customers to make sure that the food that they get at the end of the day is according to health and safety.
Okay, so maybe let me just understand that. So, I mean, if a small HDP grower came to you and they were only local gap certified, that wouldn't be a hindrance then. It wouldn't be an issue.
Not an issue, no.
Okay. All right. Maybe just as a general proposition, would you agree that implementing that higher threshold, that global gap standard, would potentially be a barrier to entry for SMME?
No,
HDP?
because we offer the local gap.
Yeah.
So there is an opportunity because there is an audit process that they can still follow.
But let's say a retailer only said, "Look, this is our standard, and that's it." Would you agree that the
I can't answer on behalf of any other retailer. As Pick and Pay, we apply both. So that's what we allow. So I can answer.
No. I'm just saying as a general proposition. Just
I can't answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's
As
fine.
Pick
That's
and
fine.
Pay, we allow both. So that's
Okay.
we don't have that barrier to market.
So do you provide assistance though to?
Yes, we do. Yes.
And on what terms?
We've got a full technical department that will support any of the growers that are wanting to come on. We provide all the information. We provide the support in getting them up and running with the local gap or the global gap. So, yes.
Thank you. And once again, I know you cover this extensively in your submissions, but maybe just as part of this public process, your supply development programs, can you
Yes.
maybe just talk to us about those and explain what they consist of and what you are doing?
So we've submitted extensive information, I think, on the supply development program. It's very successful within Pick and Pay. And we've got quite a few SMEs that have gone through the process and are still supplying us to this day and have grown their business exponentially with us. So it's a very strong program that we run within Pick and Pay, and it's a very important process for us.
Okay. And maybe over and above what you're doing already, I mean, what else can be done to uplift the specific grower class to allow them to increase their participation in the formal retail markets?
I think as Pick and Pay, we're doing a lot already from, allowing the opportunity through consolidators. We've got that as a direct into us market. I can't talk on behalf of anybody else or obviously on the fresh produce markets because I don't know what their requirements are. But as Pick and Pay, I believe we're already covering a lot by assisting with the technical support, by assisting with the relevant information required, and then also through our consolidators.
So what are the challenges that they are facing, those growers? I mean, through that supply development program, there must be some sort of back and forth. And so what are the challenges that you're picking up from that supply group?
Are you talking SME farmers in particular?
That's right, yeah. Sorry.
So I think there's obviously if I talk of Pick and Pay and the impact that load shedding's had on us and transport costs and all of that, I think the cost of farming has increased exponentially for anybody. So as an SME coming new into the market, the outlay of what they would need to pay and to develop their lands, crops, and then to be able to supply, it's become very expensive.
Okay. So Are you aware of these rural hubs that have sprung up? I know there's one in Zanin which is functioning quite well. It's run by Spar. It's called the Spar Rural Hub. So what are your views on the effectiveness of these hubs specifically in assisting these growers in participating in this market?
So I can't talk on behalf of SPAR. As I say, as Pick n Pay, we've got our consolidators. So those are our hubs, if I want to say, that we have got, and they are then remove that barrier to market then on allowing an SME to supply into us.
So where are those consolidators based? Are they sort of in those rural areas, or can you maybe just explain how they function?
We've got consolidators based all over the country. So I think we have submitted also on where our consolidators are, but I think if you want, we're happy to take that question offline if it's okay, because obviously our supplier base is it's our information, if I can say. We have submitted it all, yes.
Sure. So, but I mean, they sort of operate as pack houses essentially. So
yes.
Produce gets delivered there. They sort, grade, package it, and then that gets delivered.
Our consolidators also pick up at the farms.
Do they?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've got that as an option for our consolidators. Pick n Pay as well offers exactly the same service. We call it backhaul, where we pick up off the farm and deliver then to our distribution centres.
Okay. So maybe just servicing rural areas, and that's going to be sort of the next focus of the questioning. So does the Pick n Pay group have a presence in rural areas across South Africa?
Pick n Pay as Pick n Pay corporate, not all rural areas. We've got, so for Pick n Pay, I would say that's what we've got.
Yeah. There
are a few local stores, but as Pick n Pay, we are not in those areas.
Okay.
I think
and your franchisees, are they?
We do have franchisees, and we also do have Boxer stores, which would then also service that market, yes.
Okay, so I think from your submissions, we understand that a formal requirement in supplying Pick n Pay with fresh produce at least is the ability to supply directly to one of your 4 distribution centres around the country. You did mention backhaul now, and that's obviously one of the, but that's by arrangement only. So can you maybe explain the rationale behind the locations of those 4 DCs? I know there's one in Cape Town, Durban, PE, and Gauteng. But,
so those are the 4 main hubs of where we distribute product out of. But I think, as I've also said, we have got consolidators that are going onto the farms and procuring product off that. So it's not because we are based in Johannesburg that is now a barrier to market. They can still supply it through our consolidators. Okay. And the same would apply then for our backhaul. Okay,
so then what is the greatest distance that a store can be supplied from a DC before it becomes uneconomical to service them?
We don't have that decision as Pick n Pay. If you draw from a, if you're
so you don't sort of have a radius and say, okay, well, this DC will service the following stores in this particular area, this 200-kilometre radius, for instance, or you can't speak to that level of detail.
No, so, well, look, we obviously got radius sorted out, so we've sorted out as to who gets supplied out of a specific DC, but we don't go that there's certain stores excluded. So we've divided our national footprint into the 4 main DCs.
Okay. So I think maybe you've answered my next question, and I was going to ask whether Pick n Pay has smaller satellite DCs, but you say that you use the consolidators as an alternative rather than.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But is there, and maybe we're going to move into the sort of Boxer territory now, but is there flexibility in the system at least in which would allow an SME HDP grower in rural communities to sell directly, say, to a local Boxer store? Or is it without having been put to the expense of delivering it to a DC or a consolidator?
I can't answer on behalf of Boxer. I'm really sorry.
Just not sure.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not sure what the arrangements are from a Boxer point of view.
All right. Okay. Okay. So then, and I suppose the same applies for your franchise stores as well. I mean, if you've got a local franchise store out in, I don't know, in Toyando, for instance, I mean, could essentially the local growers in that particular area supply cabbage directly to that franchise store? Or does it...
They could.
Okay. And you don't know what terms they would do that, yeah?
No. We're not involved in the procurement or, well, when they procure outside of our system, we're not involved. So we're not involved in terms and logistics around it.
Okay, sorry, I've just got a question here from the team. I think we're going to move back to that local gap thing. Is the local gap that is implemented by Pick n Pay a generalized local gap or the one that is customized by Pick n Pay?
It's not customized by Pick n Pay. It's the government requirement local gap. So it's what we're allowed to use.
Okay. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. Some questions here. So global versus local gap. How is this different from the Agricultural Products Amendment Act, the requirements that are stipulated there?
I would prefer if we could come back on that question. We could revert back to you in writing on the clear differentials between all of that.
Okay.
I don't run the technical department, so I can't answer 100% on that.
All right, that's fine. Thank you. Chair, I think that's it from the technical team.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowles. Mr. Murray, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just really two questions from my side, and I think the first is, well, both are sort of generalised questions, but I'm particularly interested in the viewpoint from a Pick n Pay perspective. And I think the first is, I mean, the goal of this inquiry is obviously to understand and assess whether there are distortions in the fresh produce value chain, so which can affect competition. So distortions meaning, you know, any sort of irregularities that things that ought not be there, that are sort of creating difficulties for the role players in the sector. Excuse me. So particularly from the producer, who you deal with as Pick n Pay, the farmer level to the retail level, I mean, are there any distortions that you are aware of that you can think of that the Commission should be interested in? Distortions that you've observed, whether it be in the treatment of small-scale farmers, whether it be amongst your competitors, that sort of thing. Any distortions that you're aware of?
I would say no, not that we're aware of or that we've been made aware of, no.
Right. And my second question is then, as the inquiry, we're obviously looking at how the value chain developed in the past years, and we sort of discussed already that Pick n Pay had moved away, and you know we couldn't delve too much into that. We're obviously looking also at the current structure, what's currently happening in the market, and I think thirdly, we're also considering what can happen in the future. And I think particularly of relevance is if we look at what's happening across the globe, particularly in Europe with the relationship between farmers and retailers. And I think there's a hypothesis at least about, you know, is South Africa heading in the same direction? Are we on the same path towards a situation? And just for context, the concern is obviously that farmers that are supplying into the large European retailers have lost all bargaining power. They are price takers. The retailers are telling them, you will get this price for your produce. You can't bargain with me. The farmers then complaining, saying, well, I can barely cover costs. I'm not making any profits. And I don't have any alternatives. I can't supply anywhere else. I'm forced to go to supply into these retail stores. And I think the concern then is that, you know, is South Africa heading along the same route? So that's the hypothesis. That's the sort of problem. That's the concern that's happening elsewhere in the world. We're considering, obviously, whether that is something that we need to be worried about as a country, but then perhaps also as a regulator that's involved in an inquiry that's looking at distortions, bargaining power distortions, countervailing power distortions, those sorts of things. So from your perspective, and this is my question, from your perspective as Pick n Pay, what would your response be to that hypothesis that South Africa heading down the same route?
So as Pick n Pay, our farmers are very, very important in our lives, very important to us, and we know for food sustainability within this country, it's very, very important. We import a portion of products that we have to cover gaps within a season, and the cost of importing, if we think how expensive the cost of food is today on the shelf, if we had to look at going and potentially importing product, there's no way as a consumer would be able to survive. So for us, the important part is we have to, as Pick n Pay, look after our farmers, look after the agricultural industry in this country to ensure that we can provide food to every South African on the table going forward. And I don't think importing of products would ever be a solution for us.
Right. I mean, so imports would only be so when there's supply shortages, when you say, so I'm the buyer as Pick n Pay, I can't buy from the farmers, I'll consider imports. You're saying imports is not relevant, it's too expensive. But I mean, I think the problem is that there is supply.
Yes.
There is supply, there's enough supply to supply the country. And I think the concern is more nuanced to say, well, you know, the farmers have produce, they want to supply. The point is they can't bargain. They're not getting the prices they might or that they get. Sure, I mean, imports might not constrain them, it might not constrain Pick n Pay, but there is supply. So I think the concern is then to say, well, the farmers become price takers. You know, Pick n Pay might offer them, you know, your shelves would be full, you know, because there is supply, and your consumers would be happy because there's quality supply. But I think the concern is, well, from a farmer's perspective, would the retailers at some point become so powerful that they lose all ability to bargain and to say, no, I'm not taking the price you are offering me. This price is too low. I'm offering a counter price that's higher because I need to cover my cost and I need to make some profit myself.
So perhaps can I answer that one? So look, I think it will be difficult to speculate in terms of whether we're heading where, you know, Europe is. Jackie was talking around the importance of relationships. I think if you heard in terms of our process of on a weekly basis actually having discussions with our farmers, consolidators around pricing, shows you our intent. So this is not a, you know, twice a year discussion that shall be the price. We are very aware in terms of what's happening from an input point of view. Farmers, consolidators will notify us of that. We have a good sense in terms of what's happening in the market and obviously with the competition. So I can assure you, we from our point of view definitely feel that farmers today still have bargaining power. We see and sense that every single week, and I think the process that we're following supports that.
Do you think that's something that could change in future? Is there something that can affect their bargaining power in future?
I think that would be speculation, not...
No, but I mean, it's informed speculation. We're looking into the future. I mean, by its definition, it is speculation, but you are a market player. You do understand the industry. I mean, you do valuations and speculations in the future. I'm asking, you know, if you use your expertise and you see whether there are any factors in the near future which can affect their bargaining power, are you aware of any? Do you think that can happen?
I'm not aware. I don't know, Jackie.
No, I think as I say, as Pick n Pay, we're very fair with our farmers. We negotiate weekly, we look after it, and we very much have an understanding of what is going on in the industry. We understand the inputs, the pressure the farmers are under, and that weekly price negotiation that happens is based on that.
Would you, I mean, do you compete in terms of securing your supply from farmers to say, this farmer is currently supplying a competitor of mine, it's good produce, it's consistent supply, the volumes are great. Would you as Pick n Pay say, look, I want to try and secure from that farmer and say, can you supply into Pick n Pay as well? Is that something that is happening sort of actively, or is it sort of just a more naturalized process?
The process we follow is based on what we require, so our volume requirements, then based on where we can get product from in the country. By default, if it happens to be that product, that supplier also supplies into another retailer, then it's just part of the process. We are not formally going out there to target. Our target is to have product on the shelf. So we've got to, that's our most important thought process as to how and where or who we supply.
I see. So as long as you have supply, it doesn't really matter if that farmer supplies anyone else, as long as your needs are fulfilled.
No, we've got no exclusivity agreements with farmers, no.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murray. Perhaps maybe I just need you to just some basic information, just so that the understanding is correct our side. So just confirm, how many distribution centers do you have in the country?
For fresh produce, it's 4.
It's 4. Where are they located?
We've got one in Johannesburg, there's one in Cape Town, one in Port Elizabeth, and one in Durban.
Okay, so how do you source the product, in those centers? How does it work? So I want to establish whether farmers have the opportunity to supply directly to store, I suppose, which is closest to where produce is needed, or does everything have to go through the distribution center?
So for Pick n Pay corporate, we prefer that all our products go through the distribution center, and that is based on the quality control processes as well that we have in place. But as I've said, we also pick up off-farm gate as well, so it's not to say that a farmer can't get it to the distribution center. We offer that service as well. And then obviously through our consolidators as well, who will then go and pick up off the farm gate.
So what's your reach? I've seen your top, suppliers, but just want to get a sense of your reach from each of your regions. So where you source produce, how far do you think, are you able to go and do so efficiently?
We source product from all over the country. And through our consolidators, we can go through the backhaul process. It would be to where the closest Pick n Pay is, because our distribution trucks are going to those areas. But from our consolidators' perspective, the reach is as far as they will go. So there's no limit on where we will go within the country, as long as the road is serviceable and we can get there.
Okay, that's fine. And if we are to, because we were doing the pricing analysis, I just want to understand that we have this value chain correctly. So your price to the farmer, what does it include essentially? So is it a price to the DC, or is it price from the gate?
It's priced to the DC.
So it's priced to the DC, so
Yes.
okay. And then from there, from the DC to store, whose costs should we attribute then?
From the distribution center to the stores,
Yeah.
falls under Pick n Pay.
That falls under.
That's
under
our
Pick n
cost,
Pay.
yes.
Okay. And have you been, have you assessed this over time? I suppose how the system has been working in terms of efficiencies and what hopefully extract over time, or what has been your assessment?
We work very closely with our supply chain colleagues, so on a weekly basis we're meeting with them on any cost or models within that we can assist with reducing costs through the chain. So it is an ongoing process that we run, and I think the importance of it is because of the increase of costs that we spoke about due to load shedding and all of that is coming as part of it. We've got to always look at opportunity for reducing those other costs that may be in the value chain.
I'm just looking for fresh produce. I suppose there's fresh produce that's, I hope it's not all sensitive to load shedding in the same way, right?
Yes, it is, yes. So load shedding impacts from a Pick n Pay corporate, so as in our stores, we have a huge impact on load shedding because of the cold chain. Cold chain is super important to ensure shelf life on a product. So even though a product might be kept at ambient, a potato at a 35-degree heat would still have a very negative impact on the shelf life of that quality. So as soon as our air cons are not able to work or the fridges are not able to work, you shorten your shelf life. So yes, it has a big impact for Pick n Pay, yes.
Okay. So in terms of so the retail price, so when we look at this, we will look at the price of the farmer to DC and the price you charge at retail. For corporate, Pick n Pay corporate, who sets that price at retail?
For Pick n Pay, corporate pricing is set by the commercial team, so we would set that price, but it's based on the cost factors through the chain.
And for franchises, who sets the price?
Franchise sets their own pricing.
What is the role of Pick n Pay in pricing, if any at all?
Perhaps just to clarify, in terms of where franchise would procure from us, the charge to whether it's a corporate or franchise store is the same. There's no difference from where they procure from us. Obviously, if they don't, we don't know. But in terms of, call it price out to stores, corporate Pick n Pay, franchise Pick n Pay, it's the same price, which allows for the factors that Jackie was referencing to, which is obviously a cost into and then an understanding of a cost to serve, which is determined by supply chain, and that's a cost that we charge out to all stores.
Okay, so I just need to understand how it works. So we see, there's a price we see at retail, so what consumers see at retail with the Pick n Pay sticker. Who determines that price? Now let's start with Pick n Pay corporate.
So perhaps I think the first part of the answer is what I've explained, and I'm going to ask Jackie now to talk the selling price, because the cost price out is what I've explained, which is the price into the DC plus the cost to serve, which is the charge out to stores, which is the cost of the product. Perhaps, Jackie, if you can talk through the process of setting a selling price for the customer.
So selling price to the customer, we determine that as corporate Pick n Pay commercial. We decide on what that price would be, but it's based on costs through the chain. So there are costs, as we've said, that from distribution, from supplier, what's arrived at the distribution center to the cost to get it then to the stores. So we determine that selling price for corporate stores.
Right, so would we be able to, so you, and I assume, I think you have provided a lot of information, that you have provided, I hope, so that we are able to see the visibility. So there's a price the farmer charges you at DC, and the cost to serve. So the price out of the DC,
Yeah.
which is the price, and the price ultimately decide
Yes.
for retail, and all costs attributed to that. No, that's it's.
Apologies,
It's
Mr.
okay,
Chair.
it's okay. No, he's welcome.
Yeah. So what we've just discussed is around the fact that Pick n Pay has submitted full details around that. In actual fact, there was a request to have a view by product, which is very difficult, which we did. And in actual fact, we gave an update not too long ago around the same. So, and I think the position from our point of view, it's very difficult to have the detailed discussion around that, which we're welcome to have in a smaller group. But we've submitted in full in terms of our pricing. We in actual fact did so at an article level, although it was derived cost, which is in the submission.
No, I appreciate that. So in this hearing, I'll ask you about the mechanism, and I will not ask you about
Yes.
to tell us what is the actual margin. Just want to make sure that, as chair, I understand the transmission, the price transmission, how it works.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not going to question you why this margin is X. I don't think you...
Maybe from my point of view, Mr. Chair, so at a high level, there's all our produce are procured and distributed via distribution centers. There's a price into the DC, which is the distribution center, which we've discussed. Then there's a cost price out of the DC which is the same for all stores that procure from us, so which means all Pick n Pay corporate stores and those franchise stores that do buy from us. I think the second part of the discussion is setting the selling price, which determines your margin, which determines not all of profit, because that's not profit. Profit is really taking into account all costs. But certainly setting the selling price is what Jackie described earlier, which is around market-driven. Because we can have one cost price, but what is the market selling at? So there's a daily, weekly, review of what's happening in the market, and it could be in the markets, in the big centers, and what's happening in our competition. And that really determines, call it the margins at a category level, at a product level, or at a vendor level. I hope that clarifies.
Yes, indeed. I think that the transmission, that's all I needed to understand from you. I think we have a lot of information, and we are analyzing the information, so I cannot say anything.
I was really concerned you're going to ask me what's that margin on potatoes.
No, I think it's quite, the submissions are quite detailed. I think it would be a bit unfair to take you through that old spreadsheet, for this session. All I need to know from you, because we will not be seeing you all the time, is to understand from a business point of view who sets, as a matter of fact. That's all I'm asking. So I think it's clear on Pick n Pay
Yes.
corporate.
Yes.
And just also clarify for franchise stores who sets the price.
Yes, I think we've clarified that.
Can you clarify so that it's clear to me?
Yeah, so that's what I attempted to do, Mr. Chair. I think from a pricing point of view, so all corporate stores that are procured, all corporate stores are procured through our distribution centers, and those franchise stores that do buy from us. All the prices that are set, whether it is a price that we pay the farmer, a consolidator, the cost price is set by the commercial team, which is headed up by Jackie. All the selling prices that are seen by our consumers are also managed by the commercial team, which are managed by Jackie. So we have an end-to-end view of what the costs are from a farmer point of view into the DC, from the DC, cost to serve out to stores, which we allow for in setting a selling price, which are also obviously in that process we closely look in terms of what's happening in the market and what's happening with our competition. But the control of what we pay in negotiation with our suppliers and what we effectively charge out to our customer sits within our commercial team.
That part I understand, from DC to last end,
Yes.
to the shelf. I understand that, and it's quite clear that you set that price, right? You negotiate with the farmer. I think that's clear also. And for corporate stores, you equally set that price. Those are your stores. It's clear. right? I'm simply asking now because for consumer doesn't know that's a franchise store, it's a corporate store, this is a Pick n Pay store. Okay? So just want to understand so that I understand the relationship you have with your franchisees. So you would, I assume, set the price from the DC, that's your price.
Yes.
Right? The final price
Yes.
at the store by the franchise store. Who sets that price
Yes.
when they are
So
sourcing the
perhaps I
product
can-
from you?
Now,
Yes.
I think, Mr. Chair, I think I get what you're asking. So the promotional pricing, which means the prices that we promote at, are set nationally. So whether the franchisee procures from us or not, they have to sell at that price because that's what we're communicating to our customer. The balance of the product is set by themselves. So all products that are promoted nationally, which means you get a brochure, or it's digital, or it's radio, or it's TV, that has to be in line with what we're charging out nationally, which is corporate and franchise. But the balance of product, they set themselves.
So what's the current proportion between on revenue, just high level?
The current
Through-
proportion of?
yeah, of the revenue, what you sell through your franchise stores versus what you sell through your corporate stores. I
Mr.
just want to
Chair,
understand the
we have
significance of
submitted that detail. It is confidential and sensitive, but we have submitted.
Okay, that's fine. Now, on the competition, because I think you have, I checked your Form 67, I think we are still working on it. So I will not cite the numbers as yet. Because I think I just want to understand who is your competition and where does this competition occur in your view? So it's Pick n Pay. And perhaps maybe your share in that kind of a market. I think there's a number here, but I see it is including food. What is this? It's like you've provided like a share that Pick n Pay has this share in the market, but it's on food and grocery. But I think it's beyond.
We can submit that to you as well, because that's very confidential information. We'd be able to submit if you just want the produce element of it.
Okay, so that would be very helpful. So, but who's your competition? Do you have a competitor? So, if I ask you in a very simple way, do you have any competitor in South? Because you've been talking a lot about competition. That when you set the price, you look at the competition, right?
Yes, our competitors
I just want to make sure that we don't make assumptions about what you're saying. Who is your competition as Pick n Pay?
Our competitors are the other retailers. So if we talk that would be our competition, would be the other retailers.
But who do you scan? Who are those? Is that confidential? Who is?
It's any other retailer in the market. So it could be anybody dependent on the area and what stores within that area. It would be based on the retailer in that area.
Which would typically be the retailers that are actually part of this process.
Okay. Do you assess per area? So is that granular, this assessment?
Yes, we do assess per area. We look at market prices weekly per area. Yes.
Okay.
We don't set a price nationally.
So we assess competition. You're saying who's our competition. We certainly look at the different regions because they play different in the different regions. Yeah. But the big competitors are all part of this process. So I think you should have a fair good view, if you could complete all of them.
You know why I ask you this question? Because I think I've asked one retailer who does so and so compete with you, and it seems it's a retailer, but they don't see them as their competition. So I don't want to assume. And I think why I asked this, and I think we'll be asked because we need to, at some point, have a sense of the market dynamics as to, at retail level, where is competition? Are you competing with informal retail? Perhaps not, right? Are you only competing, with those retailers you constantly, share spaces with in malls, But I think we would be quite keen to just understand how you arrive at these prices on a weekly basis, what considerations you make.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe just the main competitors would, from a produce point of view, would certainly be Shoprite Checkers, would certainly be Spar, would certainly be Food Lovers, and would certainly be Woolworths. I would say those are, call it our main competitors in the produce space.
Okay, thanks. And do you track your share of the market in different regions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so that you can share with us.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think we have an aggregate number here. I don't think that number
we've got a view by region.
Yeah. All right. Okay. No, thank you very much. Now, you'll tell me if this is confidential. Or maybe before I move to this, but this is sometimes the sense we're getting, and I just want to hear from the point of view of Pick n Pay, whether when you negotiate prices with the farmers, so this is at the sourcing level, you make any reference to the prices achieved at the national fresh produce markets.
We do use the fresh produce markets as a barometer as part of the investigation on the weekly price checks. It's one of the points that we do use, yes.
All right, is that the reference price? Because I'm getting a sense that for some it may be a reference price.
What are you meaning by a reference price? What are you referring to? Which price are you referring to?
The price achieved on a daily basis at the fresh produce market. I think it's achieved. There are some commissions deducted and everything, and then the offers then are based on what a farmer could ordinarily obtain in an open market.
Could I just check with my colleague?
So on our weekly on our pricing negotiations we do weekly, there is reference that we use from the fresh produce market. We would refer that into a supplier. We would talk to them through that. We would talk to them through the referred pricing that we've now picked up from a competitor retailer, and then the discussion then happens around what is going on in the industry. So is there a surplus of product or a shortage of product? So all of that is used as a barometer to gain the cost price.
Right. Now, the reason I ask this, and I think we just need to, for purposes of this inquiry, understand the role of national fresh produce markets. I understand you don't procure from them, right? So I think that question it has been answered. But what role do they play in price discovery? Is there any role whatsoever? And I think this is that's my question really to you, insofar as Pick n Pay is concerned. But I think you have clarified this, but I don't want to, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to speak for you. But this is maybe if the question is not that clear. This is what I'm asking. It's not a tricky question.
It's
Right.
purely for reference, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
The prices on the produce market is purely for reference. In our discussions with farmers, consolidators, it is one component of many, but it's pure reference because, as Jackie alluded, is at that point, it's all around availability, excess, shortage, which could be at the market but not necessarily with the farmer. So it's pure reference.
No, so thank you. Now I think you have indicated that you have a standard contract with the farmers.
Yes, we do have a standard contract with farmers.
And you negotiate on a weekly basis. So I want to understand this. And I think your legal team will have to guide on confidentiality, because I just want to understand this contract a bit and how you because we can be in a closed session.
Is your question, there's a standard contract, but does that allow for weekly prices with differential prices? Is that
Mr. Roots maybe can come here. He's asking me, we're working a lot with Mr. Roots on other things. I can answer, but it's not.
Chair, I was just trying to establish what your question would be, because that would determine whether the answer is confidential.
So maybe let's because what I need to, I want to ask a bit on the terms, particularly the payment terms in general with respect to your large suppliers, relative to the smaller suppliers, that kind of detail. Because it seems to me it's a standard contract. Yes, you've provided it, but there are a lot of engagements and iterations. So I just want to get a bit more on the contract.
Chair, my gut feel would be it might be better to do that confidentially.
Yeah.
That's your gut. Yeah, I'm getting that sense as well, right? That we'll deal with that last. So maybe it's better. So all the matters that may be confidential, it's better we deal with them last. So we close the other this other aspect. Now, on the support to small farmers, and I think my colleagues have asked this. I just want to understand the programs you have and when did this program start and how effective you think have been over time. As from a Pick and Pay
So that
corporate.
submission we've also done, and I think
Yeah.
if you want further detail on it, we've got a team that runs that. We would be able to submit all the relevant
But I'm not
information.
getting a sense of when it started, what is the, can you see? So I think that information, I think the submissions we appreciate, right? But I think there's some detail. I think that could be helpful, because I think it's understanding the extent and the value, if any, of these kinds of programs. But
No
just
problem, we'll be
sharing your
able to.
experience, if you are able to, if there are any challenges you're picking up in dealing with small suppliers or things like that.
Mr. Chair, if that's good to you, we'll do that in writing. Pick and Pay, very proud of the SME program, which touches on the Ackerman Foundation. I think if you know, our founder passed on a couple of months ago, as you know, but certainly as part of the values of Pick and Pay, it's certainly entrenched in our ways of working, and there's huge pride within how the business is supporting the small-scale farmers, and certainly we can provide more detail on that.
We have asked you this question. I think we've asked it in general, but I think we can ask you again this question. If because this inquiry is looking at any factors that could be distorting competition, if any, in this value chain. If from a Pick n Pay point of view, you have assessed this market to that extent and picked up areas where maybe of inefficiencies in value chain things or regulatory that could maybe help improve efficiencies in the system. Are there any such features in South Africa in the fresh produce value chain that you have identified for yourselves as Pick n Pay as maybe things you would like to share with the inquirer?
No, I would, if anything, we would come back on it, but as we stand here today, no, there's nothing we could submit now.
Just asking you, just based on your own experience. I'm not. It's what you know. I think you've mentioned load shedding a bit, so I just want to know. I don't want to make any assumptions about anything. If you are able to share, I'm not going to. I appreciate that you can make further submissions.
Mr. Chair, you're asking whether there's in our day-to-day management, but also in this process, your question is around, whether we believe within this value chain there's opportunity to be more efficient, and the answer has to be yes.
And any, because I ask if there's any ideas you have, right? So this is the reason for the question, right? What is if there are, because there's nothing wrong to say there are no challenges, which is fine for the inquiry, right? That the market is working efficiently, there are no distortions, there are no regulatory barriers, there are no impediments whatsoever in the value chain. So the prices we get are the best prices in South Africa because we are running an efficient system. From the farmer, retailer to maybe distribution center, to the retailer, whichever way the product is supplied.
I'd like us to just check back with our legal team. It to me feels like a very broad question. Could be a valid one. If you don't mind, we'd just like to have a quick discussion with our team.
No, please, yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, I've been advised maybe to respond on two. I'll respond on the first question, and then Jackie will respond on the second. I think the one very valid question that you've been asking is around this SME program that Pick n Pay has been running, and you've been asking as to how long that is. I think it's back to 2000, to be very honest with you. So, just to clarify, I'm not exactly sure, but I've been part of Pick n Pay for over 30 years, different roles, but I can, as long as I remember, as part of the Acumen Foundation, one of the branches, if I can call it. One of the key initiatives is around the SME program. So I would certainly say that it's been around for many, many, many years. We can clarify, but my quick guess would be roughly around since 2000. And then just with regards to your question around, which I think is a very fair question, is to ask around in our learnings, in our going about, in our ways of working, around inefficiencies that we believe within the chain, in our own experience, because obviously we can't talk on behalf of the farmers, but certainly Jackie will share, in our view, what we find to be, call it inefficiencies in the chain.
So I think the importance is in our discussions with farmers, and that we obviously we build very strong relationships. So there's a lot of communication that happens, and definitely the cost of or the costs that have now fallen on the farming industry. Load shedding is a massive one. It's around not only electricity for cold chain, but it's around running of water, irrigation systems and all of that, which I think a lot of people forget about. But you need irrigation systems to water. It doesn't matter what crop it is, needs water. So load shedding has a big impact. The cost of seed and agriculture has increased. A lot of the seeds are imported, so we all know what the cost of imports is and the impact or the things impacting the cost of imported products into South Africa. Fertilizer costs as well, which has also come about with what is going on in the world. A lot of the fertilizers are procured from outside of South Africa. The cost of labor and the ongoing increased costs of labor. Another big thing that's impacting our farmers is security. So due to food shortages, there's a lot of theft happening on the farms. They have to increase security not only for their personal well-being and looking after the people living on the farm, but it's around security of product, that it's not being stolen. With the climate changes and things happening as well, that has a big impact. A lot of our farmers are now having to put up structures to mitigate the risk of hail and things like that. So that's had a big impact, as well as for those farmers that potentially can't afford to put up those kind of structures, the impact that hail would have on their crops. They will plant a couple of hectares worth of crops and a hailstorm comes through and they lose the entire crop. That is a massive impact on the cost for them to do business with us. I think also obviously transport and fuel has had a big impact for them, as it has for everybody. We've then also, with all the auditing requirements around what is expected for a product to get delivered, the impact of that cost, the cost of packaging. A lot of our packaging raw materials are also imported, so that has a big impact on the cost of product. And then also around water shortages. So a lot of the areas may have water shortages. The farmers would then have to put in borehole systems or alternative sources where they could get water, or have to, because as I've said, all crops need water. So as a general comment, that is what we are hearing from our supplier base.
Maybe just to add, I think one point in this whole value chain that we're finding, in our view, inefficiency is around what we're seeing from a waste point of view. Because if you look at the point around the impact of load shedding in store, refrigeration, the life of the product, certainly we see, call it a cost to the product overall, certainly in our view, is waste. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that. So maybe just lastly, what have you, I think noting all of those, costs or changes, what have you observed the prices that the farmers have been charging you over time? What has been your observation? What have you seen? Are you seeing an upward trend, or are they constant, or is it, are they going down?
So I think we're all seeing an upward trend. We can see it across everywhere. There's definitely an upward trend because of the cost implications that goes with, I think, a lot of the things that I've listed. So there's definitely an upward.
The trend would see from the farm gate prices. Is that what we...
Yes, that is correct.
As far as Pick n Pay is concerned?
Yes, that is correct.
And how would that... how have you managed the transmission through to retail as Pick n Pay?
So I would say, Mr. Chair, that in some cases we absorb, which means we simply don't pass on. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we just can't. Two is depending on what the market does. But certainly if you look at what we submitted, when you start looking at, call it the profitability, call it at a net level on produce, I would certainly highlight the fact that it's clear from the numbers that the impact is fairly severe. If you look at what we've submitted, from a, call it a profitability point of view, if you start allocating certain costs, if you look at operational costs at store level, specific costs that we've highlighted around the cold chain, load shedding, etc. There's certainly pressure in the chain. I think Jackie, in a very practical way, have explained that to us. We can certainly see that play out in prices, but from a Pick n Pay point of view, as certainly fighting for the rights of our customers, in a lot of cases have absorbed some of these increases as much and as far as we can and could.
All right. Thank you very much. Just want to check my colleagues if any follow-up questions. Mr. Mare, Mr. Bowles, fine. Do you have any? Because we'll come back to the last, but I think for purposes of this public session, whether you have anything you would like to share with the inquiry.
I would like to, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity for Pick n Pay being here. I do believe that from a company point of view, this is part of openness and transparency, and hopefully this is assisting you in the overall process. You have a very clear view in terms of what you'd like to achieve, and hopefully in terms of what Jackie and I today did, is assisting you in that process. I can assure you from our point of view, it's about openness, it's about transparency, and obviously where we could, we shared in this public forum. Otherwise, I think we submitted quite a lot of detail. I was involved with the process of submitting, and we were very open, honest, and frank, and I hope this assists you in the overall process. I think that's it from me, Mr. Chair. But they say ladies always has the last say.
Oh, indeed.
Thanks, Jan. No. Thank you, and we really hope we can help further after the session with any other requirements that we maybe haven't been able to answer yet. But I think Johan has summed it up really well. So as Pick n Pay, we're here to support the process. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time. We will have to, I think, end the streaming now, and as far as possible clear the room, but I don't see